We're moving on to our next, which will be a conversation between two industry experts. We're going to discuss the regulation the industry should embrace. And to the stage are coming Maarten Haijer. He is the Secretary General of the EGBA, the European Gaming and Betting Association, and Birgitte, the CEO of Birgitte and Associates. Thank you very much. The floor is yours. And please remember any questions through Slido. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Peter Paul, and hello, everyone. Ooh, it's late in the day. But as a former regulator, I can find out where you live, so you better stay in the room, right? So, Maarten, I've known you for many, many years as well. I don't exactly know where you live, but again.
We keep it that way.
So we're going to talk about regulation as such, not only in Germany, but perhaps also as you represent EGBA, more on a European level as well. So we do on and off listen to a lot of complaints about regulation happening in Europe. Is that the right way to go?
It's a very good question. I'm now just like to use Europe as an example and then relate back to Germany as well. But I think we heard today quite a lot of things that can be changed and improved. But I think the way to get there is a question of how do we perceive ourselves and how does the outside world see us. I think Ewout touched upon it as well in terms of our trust and whether we're seen as relevant. And in that context, I think we need to be aware that we shouldn't complain about over-regulation as such. That's something that I think from the outside world, we're selling online gambling services. It's difficult to see for the average person in the street or a politician that we would suffer from too much regulation. Even though we might think so, or it might be bad regulation, but I don't think we will get our way by saying there's too much regulation. I think and the other thing, I think we had discussions today already about the black markets and the regulated markets. We comply with regulation, and from that sense, I think we should embrace regulation as a principle. It's a way that we can distinguish ourselves from the others, from the black market. Regulation ensures that there is a level playing field for everyone that has a license. It ensures that some of the public policy concerns that we are concerned about potentially are actually covered. I would say a good example will be fraud prevention, AML. And I think as an industry we should do more in terms of selling ourselves. KYC is a good example. I think if we look at what we do in Brussels in terms of lobbying the Commission and what some of the big tech people do in terms of KYC and requirements they have, we're far better, far more organized, far better requirements that we fulfill, far more stringent rules, minor protection as well. So there's a lot of regulation that we comply with and that we actually do better than other sectors. And I think we should kind of position ourselves from that perspective much stronger. And if we do that, I think we have also more trust and more abilities to influence the parts of regulation that we think are less good than the others.
So I know for certain that, and we see regularly, you come out from it with press releases on new improvements and new achievements. So does it make a lot of sense to you to actually dig even deeper into a collaboration between all stakeholders? Do you still see this ground to be covered? Could you do even better? Or
no,
are
you
involved in improving regulation?
Absolutely, I think it's absolutely crucial. I think that's also interesting what Christian said around the black market and his Google work with the German regulator. So a lot of the data is being gathered and being seen by the operator, typical in this case, but by others as well. But the way to have actually success is to share that then with the regulator that picks it up and uses it. And I think that's a very good example in Germany where that works. And the other area where I think there's a lot of concerns, not just in Germany, in other jurisdictions as well, is everything about protecting the players over and beyond what normal consumer protection is for if you buy an Amazon book, but all the stuff that's more related to prevention of harm. There, I think there's a lot of room for improvement. We know that some of the more horizontal instruments are being put upon operators and customers don't work. We see that everywhere in Europe. Horizontal deposit limits, a lot of advertising restrictions don't have the desired outcome. The politicians might well think that this is well mentioned and well intended. But we can't just say that. We also need to show what will work and what does work. And there, I think, as an industry and operators, we sit on a gold mine of data where we can see what happens if you have communication tools or deposit limits that the customer can use himself. You can see what the effect is. And we need to use that data to share that information with the regulator so that we can improve what is out there with the idea of actually protecting those customers that are granted a limited part of our customers, but they are, I mean, the main focus of all the policy debates. And if we don't get them on board and safely on board, then I think we'll lose the discussion on regulation anyway.
So Maarten, you and I and many of us in the room, and also a lot of new people, have enjoyed meeting in Germany every year, discussing developments and so forth. Staying on the positive side of things, can you see a positive improvement of where Germany worked 5 years ago and compared to now? Are we on a good track for further improvement of the market, of the regulation and so forth? Just a small question.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. But I think there's improvement over 5 years. Yes, there's improvement, for sure. But yeah, I mean, compared to other countries in the EU, at least, it's very difficult to move forward in Germany, I would say, based on also the discussion that we had today and that we heard. There is much room for improvement. I mean, I don't know whether you get that question, but I sometimes get the question, so what is the best member state example?
Always.
It used to be Denmark, but that's a bit tricky as well now. But unfortunately, it is relatively easy to say which is one of the member states or the countries in Europe that does least well. And unfortunate, and I think I get away with saying it, being Dutch, not being kicked out in the capital of Germany. I think the way that Germany is organizing its online gaming regulation is really one of the least well good, or maybe the worst example in Europe on how you go about regulating the online gambling market.
But also, as I understood you the first time around, right? So you actually keep up your optimistic approach as well, right? I mean, we don't get far just pointing fingers, right? No. I mean, as you said, we need to sort of like find a way to still improve regulation and support actually politicians and regulators in doing that job as well, right?
Absolutely.
And we know we all need to chip in. So do you ever sort of like lose your optimism and sort of trust in everyone, or is it easier or more complicated than ever before?
No, I mean, so I have a really strong belief in that if we go for more in safer gambling area, where the more personalized approach is working and will be working. I think we're very at the early stage of that. But I do believe that the policy objective of politicians, regulator, but especially also the legislator, that their citizens need to be protected, is an absolutely valid one. And if we don't get that right, and with me, I really sincerely think that's both the regulators, the wide industry, operates the wide industry, but also the regulator. If we don't get that right, we will continue to have these discussions around regulation. But I think there's much hope and improvement that we can get from these individualized approaches with new technology, AI obviously as well. And if we can show that that has an impact on player welfare and reduction of harm, I think that's a very good story to go to the regulator with as well. And the regulator has an interest in a well-functioning market. So yeah, no, I'm optimistic. And another reason why I think we should be optimistic is that the black market is not very good, but usually it's good to have a common enemy. So we as an operator, we don't really like the black market for obvious reasons. The regulator doesn't really like it because they're outside of their, what they really can do. I think they want the customers to play within in the regulated environment as well. And I think it will focus the minds on good discussions. So I'm actually quite optimistic going forward, also for Germany.
So looking at collaboration, so I'm going to ask you another question that we haven't talked about, Maarten. So you're so experienced, you can take it. So how about the collaboration between all these different associations out there, right? We see different kind of associations also beyond Europe, stepping onto the stage, having great ideas and best intentions of supporting a well-regulated market wherever in the world. Do you believe that the associations, not only in Europe, but worldwide, really could step up even more and make a huge difference? Do you have more powers between you than the single regulator in a single country would ever have? Leading question.
No. No, I mean, as associations, we can do what our members allow us to do and how much funding is available, obviously. And I do think that in terms of representation of the industry, if you compare us to other sectors that are also under strict scrutiny, like alcohol, tobacco is another example, but others as well, pharmaceuticals, anything that can potentially harm individuals. Our representation is limited. The good news is that it is increasing. We see discussions also in international organizations come up around gambling that our members are very focused on and somewhat concerned about. We also have speaking to other associations around it. So I think there's much more awareness that we need to work together. If we want to address the gap in knowledge around safer gambling, all the data that is available should be shared. We don't do that. I don't think regulators do that enough, if at all. The same goes for operators. We sit on a gold mine of one of the really key arguments that we have is that we have a lot of data available and that we could put into the discussions. We don't do that enough, so that's another thing that we need to do more of as a whole, as an industry. And I think there's a lot of room for improvement, to be honest.
So data-driven evaluation of the treaty, right, would be one of the big wishes I heard today. Right?
Yeah.
But data is really many things, right? It also depends on who collects the data. So as you say, at the end of the day, it's also a matter of trust, ultimately. So the mix of the two. Have you ever been turned down when you asked for data or from your members, or is the industry in general interested in actually sharing the data for the better good?
Absolutely. No, we publish a yearly sustainability report where we ask our members to, we sign an NDA with the members that want it, because some of it is slightly commercially sensitive, but about the tools that their customers are using, the types of tools, how often they use it, the communication is being had between the customer and the operator. And also the effect that it has. And so, what the behavior is of the individual customer after a communication or a warning has gone out for people with different variations of problematic gambling. That part is still needs to be developed because its cause and effect is always difficult to prove, but we do have some figures around it. So that's really important. The cooperation with regulators is much more difficult. Because we want to improve the sustainability report on a yearly basis, we asked the Dutch regulator to give us data about how they see consumer protection being developed by using certain measures and requirements that they have. But they said we don't have the data, we don't sit on the data, we can't share it, that's in your hands. So they might get a lot of data because they collect the data, but then they don't aggregate it or they don't put it together as an analysis tool, partly because it's just a lot of work, partly also not for being responsible, maybe partly also because they don't necessarily want to know the outcome at that stage. But there's also more information that can be shared.
So actually, we kind of have some of the solutions or the key knowledge or the key proof out there somewhere in the middle there. If everybody were willing or able to take the data and put them in the same bowl, we would actually be able to somehow make more clear conclusions for the way forward, also for Germany. That's what you're saying?
I do think so, yeah, but there also needs to be some sincerity in the discussions around whether you are really going for a properly regulated environment where you accept that there's demand and offer and there is a competition in the market. And I think that's One thing that stands out, or not stands out, but one thing that is kind of questionable in Germany, whether there's a vision what the online gambling market is and what it should look like and where it should be going. I think that's one thing that makes it difficult discussions in Germany, and it's very particular to Germany, to be honest. So yeah, and I wonder how sincere the willingness in Germany is in the wider sense to have a really properly functioning online gambling market. It seems to be quite a lot of conservative forces. An example, so we proposed in the context of SEN to have markers of harm, which has been approved and will be published in the official journal. It's voluntary and is voted on by the member states of the SEN committee, so that's the European Standardization Committee. The vote took place in September. A number of countries didn't vote or abstained. 15 countries voted. 16 voted, and there was one country voting against, and that was Germany. So, and to be honest, it's not Germany, the state Germany, but it's representatives represented in DIN, which is the German standardization body. But there are stakeholders there, and they come to the conclusion that it's not good to have European standard around markers of harm. So I think in that very conservative environment, Germany really stands out compared to other countries.
Well, I'm not here to sort of like to defend in any way Germany, but on a larger scale or from another perspective, but still within the same line of what you're saying. So what, in my view, makes it really complicated sometimes to see a solution out there would be that not only, of course, are we discussing the obvious or the well-known factors that keeps us from having the perfect regulation, right? But we might also be facing a lot of sort of like deep down views on gambling that are not sort of like shared in the open. But we are also dealing with culture, tradition, many other issues that actually dictates or provide people with a pro or con to gambling. And they are not always sharing that, but they might just be working against whatever we do and try to achieve. And of course, that's a very hard one, right? If it's not even up in the open, then it's hard to deal with.
Yeah.
And as a regulator, I experience also, of course, that obviously not all licensees and everyone in industry agrees on the same things at all times, and some operators would even love to have the market to themselves or whatever, right? So, but that complicates things. I mean, so looking at the industry you represent, and those that might be your future members, how do you manage to get them in the same room and actually agree to an extent where you can actually get a move on things? Isn't it sometimes very complicated to identify and figure out how to agree on things? Because, I mean, industry, they're different. They sell different products. They have different interests at heart to a certain point. Isn't it complicated sometimes?
It is complicated, but I think in the end, I think the interests of these ARM members are aligned in the sense that you need to have a functioning market where there are basic requirements, and we appreciate that there is much more requirements put on online gambling or gambling in general than on, let's say, selling a book on Amazon online. But within those kind of big parameters, I think we have a fairly simple way of cooperating because, yeah, obviously the members are competitors and might have different focuses. But in the end, we all benefit the most if there's a proper regulatory framework where the requirements are clear, where there's good communication with the regulator. Taxation is always too high. There will always be complaints about taxation, but that's just the way markets function. So it is not simple, but at the same time, it's also not rocket science, to be honest.
Right. Well, that's a good note to end our discussion so far.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this fantastic discussion online. Thank you. Thank you, Maarten.